It started on November 5, 2025 at exactly 9:47 a.m. when I unlocked my phone and saw a notification that made my heart stop. My house had been sold. The screen flashed with my name on a legal document, but the signature was not mine. The president of our HOA, the woman everyone trusted, had forged it. In that moment the world tilted around me. Neighbors were outside, cameras were rolling, and whispers spread like fire. The story was no longer local, it was everywhere. CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera, all flashing one question: how did an HOA president sell a house without the owner even knowing? The buyer arrived in a black SUV, papers in hand, demanding keys. I stood there frozen, watching my life being traded for profit. The tension thickened. The HOA board members vanished into silence while the forged document went viral across social media. The FBI hotline rang nonstop and reporters stood on my lawn. My name became the headline of the day. The betrayal from someone I had coffee with every morning felt like a stab that echoed across borders. I never imagined that a suburban neighborhood scandal could shake millions across continents, but this was only the beginning, and the real chaos had not yet begun. By the time the clock hit 11:22 a.m., the air around my street felt electric and deadly. The buyer, a corporate attorney named Michael Ross, had just realized the signature on the property deed was fake. He looked at me, his face pale and furious, then pulled out his phone and dialed 911. His voice trembled but carried authority. "This is a fraudulent sale," he said. "Send officers now." Within minutes, 2 police SUVs screeched to a halt, their sirens cutting through the calm suburban morning. The HOA president, Mrs. Karen Dalton, still wearing her official badge, stood frozen, her lips twitching as the officers demanded answers. The live stream that began as a neighborhood update suddenly turned into an international sensation. Millions watched from across the world as the truth unfolded in real time. Comment sections exploded in every language. "Justice for the homeowner" trended on Twitter X, and people from London to Karachi were glued to their screens. The officers led her toward the patrol car, but she refused to move, shouting about power and ownership as if the neighborhood was her kingdom. The crowd gasped as one officer read the charges: forgery, wire fraud, and property theft. A neighbor whispered she used to brag about never being caught. The buyer turned to me and said, "I think this goes deeper than you know." His words echoed like thunder, and for the first time I felt that this was not just about one house but a web of corruption stretching far beyond our street. By 12:08 p.m. the police lights painted the houses red and blue while phones and drones hovered above, capturing every second. The chaos outside my front door was being broadcast live to over 4 million viewers across multiple platforms. People from Moscow to New York were typing in disbelief as the HOA president screamed that she had done nothing wrong. The live comments turned wild, some calling it the biggest neighborhood scandal in America, others demanding a full federal probe. I could feel the weight of the world watching my driveway. The HOA office had locked its doors and news vans began parking across the lawns. The air smelled like panic and hot asphalt. The detective in charge, a calm but sharp man named Agent Cole, approached me quietly and said, "You are not the only victim. We found 5 other forged deeds in the same district." The ground beneath me seemed to disappear. Cameras zoomed in on my face, capturing the raw shock as the realization hit. This was organized theft masked under community management. My phone buzzed nonstop, journalists from every continent asking for statements. #HOA fraudstorm exploded within minutes. The world was watching, not just because it was dramatic but because it exposed how easily power could twist small communities into criminal networks. The live chat kept scrolling faster than I could read, with people begging for updates and justice. The quiet neighborhood had turned into the stage for a global reckoning. At exactly 1:15 p.m. the FBI agents arrived in black suits, moving with silent precision. They carried folders labeled Operation HOA Truth, and every camera on the street swung toward them. The tension was unbearable. Reporters whispered that federal investigators had connected the HOA president to a hidden bank account in the Cayman Islands worth nearly $2 million. The crowd gasped as her husband was escorted from their house next door, his hands shaking as he tried to explain that it was all a misunderstanding. The agents ignored him and began sealing off the HOA office with yellow tape. The whole scene felt unreal, like a political scandal unfolding in the middle of suburbia. The neighborhood that once argued about lawn heights now became the epicenter of a national fraud case. The lead investigator spoke to the press calmly, saying, "This is not just one homeowner. This is a systematic property scam running through multiple states and possibly foreign accounts across the world." Headlines erupted with disbelief. HOA president under federal probe trended on every major site while news anchors debated how such corruption could hide in plain sight. My phone kept buzzing with strangers sending support from Tokyo, Berlin, and Dubai. The world was no longer watching out of curiosity. They wanted justice. Every second of the broadcast felt like history being recorded live. I looked at my house, now surrounded by lights and microphones, and realized it was no longer just mine. It had become evidence in one of the most shocking community scandals of our time. By 4 p.m. The agents uncovered what no one was ready to believe. Inside the HOA office behind a false wall they found stacks of fake documents, blank title deeds and digital tablets used for signature forgery. The live cameras caught every detail as investigators carried the evidence boxes outside and the crowd gasped in disbelief. Mrs. Karen Dalton stood behind the police tape shouting that it was all a setup, that she was framed. But her voice cracked as the FBI showed her recorded calls linking her to offshore buyers. From that moment the tone of the story changed. It was no longer about a greedy neighborhood leader but about an international web of property laundering using HOA communities as the perfect cover. News channels replayed the footage, non-stop anchors speaking in urgent voices about how a local case exposed a billion-dollar underground operation. The global audience was in shock. Hashtags spread in every language from English to Russian to Arabic demanding full transparency. My heart pounded as I realized how close I had come to losing everything, not just a home but my identity itself. The lead agent turned to me during the broadcast and said quietly, "You were the first to notice the pattern. Without you this would have gone unnoticed for years." His words echoed as the cameras zoomed in, capturing a single tear sliding down my face, and millions watching felt it too. This was no longer just news, it was justice unraveling, live before the world. At exactly 3:29 p.m. the final act unfolded in front of millions watching live. The HOA president Karen Dalton stood in silence, her face pale as the federal agents placed the cuffs on her wrists. The crowd held its breath, the air thick with disbelief. The flashing lights reflected off her HOA badge, now meaningless, as the lead officer announced she was under arrest for conspiracy, forgery and grand theft property. The moment the cuffs clicked the internet exploded. News anchors shouted breaking story across every channel from Washington to Warsaw. Viewers flooded the live chat with messages of relief and shock. Some called it the downfall of suburban corruption, others called it poetic justice. The buyer Michael Ross stood beside me shaking his head, whispering, "I have never seen anything like this in my entire career." The agents led her past the crowd and cameras followed every step. The sound of shutters clicking was endless. Neighbors cried, some out of sympathy, most out of anger. The street that once smelled of fresh lawns now smelled like the end of an empire. The live counter crossed 8 million views as Karen was driven away into the horizon, leaving behind the wreckage of her power. I looked at my house, once stolen, now surrounded by silence. The agent handed me back the official deed, this time with my real signature verified and sealed. My voice trembled as I said on camera, "Let this be a warning that greed, no matter how small, can destroy empires." The world watched in silence as justice finally closed its grip on the most shocking HOA scandal of our time. November 8, 2025. The world woke up to the breaking headline that marked the end of the Willow Creek nightmare. At exactly 7:15 a.m., federal prosecutors announced the formal charges against Karen Mitchell: conspiracy, data theft, wire fraud, and unauthorized surveillance under national security law. Every network carried her mugshot, a haunting image of the once flawless woman who had controlled her street like a dictator. The community that once feared her now watched in silence as justice unfolded in real time. But what stunned everyone most was the revelation that Karen had been under FBI observation long before she called the police on us. Her false HOA had been the final act of desperation, a crumbling front for her double life that could no longer stay hidden. By noon, Willow Creek was unrecognizable. News trucks left. The barricades were removed. Neighbors began repainting fences, planting flowers, and reclaiming the peace they had lost. For the first time, the neighborhood didn't feel like hers, it felt like ours. The tension that had poisoned every block for years slowly began to fade. Still, no one could shake the memories of the endless spying, the whispered threats, and the night the FBI stormed the street. The entire ordeal had changed everyone forever. At 6:30 p.m., as the sun set over the quiet cul-de-sac, an agent returned one last time to thank the families for their cooperation. He said the words we had waited to hear for days. "It's over." My mother broke down crying, my father stood still, and I finally understood how fragile peace can be when power is left unchecked. Karen Mitchell now sits in a federal detention center awaiting trial. Her empire of control lies in ruins, her name forever tied to the biggest suburban scandal in recent history. Willow Creek has moved on, but the echo of her obsession remains a warning to everyone watching. Sometimes the greatest danger doesn't come from outside your gates. It lives right next door, smiling, pretending to protect you, while quietly destroying everything you thought was safe.